All right, we're filming. We're not live, but this will be posted momentarily. And so yeah. Anyway, welcome to, I think this is the 5th episode of Those Two Metal Dudes. It's been about a month. We had the holidays and some other issues come up, but we're back with a very, very interesting topic that was blowing our brains and our minds. It took a lot of research and note-taking and listening and overload. Yeah, but it's a good one. And this is going to be the first part in a 2-part series, although this episode will probably be 2, possibly 3 separate 30-minute videos, depending on how long we talk today. And then next week or the week after, whenever we resume, hopefully next week, if everything goes well, we will have the second installment of this topic. And I'm going to let my co-host Chris tell you what the topic is.
Okay, the topic for today is twin guitar attack. Now, very, very hard, difficult, cumbersome topic to even try to grasp. I mean, I had so much trouble trying to come up with bands, because it was either going to be like, you know, best like twin lead or just twin guitar in general, and I think we just pretty much just went with twin guitar in general. So my list when we start doing it is going to be probably more like 2 lead guys, you know, like where they're like lots of like shred what I think like twin guitar, but you can't dismiss a good rhythm guy though, Mike. You know, like rhythm's the foundation, then that lead is just that, you know, the sprinkling on top. But to have 2 dudes that can shred, ultimate. I mean, that's just badass. But definitely wanted to keep people in that had a really good rhythm guy with a good lead guy, twin guitars too. So today it's pretty much just like twin guitar attack. Yeah. It doesn't matter what. It's just that if they have 2 guitars in it, that's what what we're going for. And I know he did, and I did too. This has probably been the hardest topic so far. The other one's been pretty easy. Well, in a sense, it's been easy. This was more of a lot of just sitting and just like, and then culling through so much, being like, I really want to mention them, but these are bad. You know, these guys are badass, but it's like, well, these new cats that are doing that, but the old, you know, like trying to show respect to the old and then having the new, man, it's just, it's hard. So I mean, yeah, I mean, this is going to be a long thing. I've talked about this. So, I mean.
So this one could be an hour and a half. You know, like I said, it may be 3, you know, separate little videos. And next week may or may not be as long or longer. But
what we're going to do, we pick different subgenres. And we're going to have like a top 3. Which made it very difficult out when we start mentioning the the subgenres, and people are going to be like, oh yeah, that had to be hard. You know what I mean? Like the only 3, you know, in the entire existence of metal, that we're going to present. So, I don't know. I guess we can start with like maybe like talk about forefathers, if you wanted to. I mean, like as far as just like getting the beginnings out of the way and kind of just going with it. Let's see. Let's see the topic. The topic's going to be, the genres are traditional, thrash, death, black, and then we lumped like doom, stoner, sludge. I guess it could be all lumped in like doom. We will. I mean, we will
be
do
3 separate categories, but then I know even more stuff.
And that's what made it hard too. Because then picking the 3 out of all of that, and then post-hardcore, which. I think I originally said grind, and then you chimed in and was like post, and then that made it even harder doing the post-hardcore. Because, I mean,
mainly the grind thing for me was mainly because I love grindcore. I listen to a lot of it, but I just don't. There's not a lot of grindcore bands I know that have 2 guitar players. A lot of them are just 1 guitar player. I mean, you know, you think about like Pig Destroyer and
Cephalic
Carnage, and I think
Napalm Death,
Nosebleed, Napalm Death,
original Napalm Death.
A lot of those bands, you know, that I love, it's just 1 guitar player. Yeah. Most of them are typically.
Because that was a hard thing to do, because a lot of it I would think of a band and I'm like, you only have 1 guitar player.
Most grindcore bands seems like, most grind bands are like 4-piece. You usually have a guitar player, bass player, drummer, and a singer.
Right.
there's not a lot of grindcore bands where they have like a singer/guitarist, where you have that in a lot of other metal genres, which I think it's just because grindcore is so crazy and chaotic.
Wild. Yeah.
It'd be kind of hard to do vocal styles and play guitar for that kind of music. But anyway, I'm gonna let you start it off with the, you want to do the forefathers, and then I'll tell you mine, and then we'll just keep back and forth with each style.
Yeah, because
or the forefathers is going to be the traditional, or is that
you know what? We could just start with traditional. We'll just go with our,
because I feel like that's kind of the, to me, it is the forefathers
yeah.
of the traditional heavy metal.
Are you want me to?
Yeah, go for
it. Okay. Okay.
I'm intrigued.
Now my 3 traditional. Number 3 would be Iron Maiden. Number 2, Merciful Fate, and then number 1, Judas Priest. For me, as far as just like my 3 traditional. It's not. All this is just our opinion. So mine says this. This is the bands that I love within traditional. I imagine Mike's is about to be different than mine, which is great.
Only slightly.
Which is great. That's why I love doing this, because it's just, you know, like I always say, there's never a wrong answer within this. So everything's badass. So it doesn't matter. But that is my top 3 that I'm starting with.
I knew that 2 out of the 3 we would have the same, because I don't feel like 2 of these bands have to be in the top 3. You know, Maiden and Priest, obviously. The order is a little different. I've actually got, and this one was a tough one because I kept going back and forth, are they really traditional metal? And I thought about other bands like Accept and some other bands, and it's like, you know, there's some great bands like that, but I'm not like huge fan, you know, and I don't know enough about it. So I'm a big fan of this band, Twin Guitar Attack. I think one of the best in the, going back kind of, you know, to the early to mid 80s. And to me, I mean, so, you know, you can say they're progressive, hard rock, you know, hair metal, whatever. A lot of their stuff, especially the earlier catalog or maybe the middle period, is definitely metal. So for me, I had to put Queensryche.
Oh, wow, cool. Okay.
You know, maybe not like the heaviest of metal, but, you know, they've had some really blistering guitar work between Michael Wilton and Chris DeGarmo. You know, Silent Lucidity and Jet City Woman, Best I Can, some of their big hits. But, you know, Chris DeGarmo left in 2007. And of course, Jeff Tate's been gone for a while too, so I'm not really a big fan of what they're doing now. I don't really care for their current singer. That's controversial because I know a lot of people that love him, but I'm just a Jeff Tate guy. I like the old school Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime, and you know, Empire and all that stuff. So, anyways, that was the big. Michael Wilton and Chris DeGarmo were kind of like the main guys that had that Twin Guitar Attack in Queensryche. Both of them played leads. You know, both awesome guitar players. And they were both there from the beginning in 1980, and DeGarmo left in 2007. So I mean, they were doing it together for 27 years. So I figure, you know, a lot of these bands, I'm gonna have to talk about the years, because there's a lot of bands where there's one guy that's been there the whole time, and they've rotated out other guitar players, especially when you talk about Priest and Maiden. So for number 2 for me was Judas Priest, Glenn Tipton, KK Downing. That's like the, you know, the main dudes. Yeah. Tipton, 1974, still in the band. KK Downing was there from 1970 and left in 2011. So, I mean, for, you know, 25, 30-something years, whatever, those 2 guys were tearing it up together. You know, I'm not going to list all the songs, even though I got a bunch listed here, but number 1 for me, it's why I'm wearing the shirt, Iron Maiden. Dave Murray and Adrian Smith are kind of like the core of, you know, and Iron Maiden has 3 guitar players, and they have for quite a while, but you know, Janet Jers, and you know that he came much later in the group, and so I don't know. It was like triple Guitar Attack. I'm going with the classic. You know, 2 guys that were there together for a long time. Dave Murray started in 1976 and still there. Adrian Smith still there. He joined 4 years later, 1980. So I mean, those guys have been together for 40 years now doing this. You know, Dave Murray's been in the band for 44. So, I mean, you know, wow. And to me, and as far as traditional heavy metal, there is none greater. I mean, those guys are like, I mean, they're the reason why bands like Mastodon, Metallica, you know, and a slew of other bands do what they do. And then I just have to mention this as, to me, the forefather of all of this is Thin Lizzy.
Yeah.
Without Thin Lizzy, there's no Maiden, there's no Mastodon, there's really no Metallica. So that's my top 3. There you go. On to the next.
Yeah, because I mean, it would take so long to have honorable mentions. I mean, like, because out of all that, I even, to be honest, I even wrote Def Leppard down from the, New Wave of British heavy metal for them coming in as a twin guitar. That, and like you're talking about, like, Accept, because I was looking at, like, hell, even Scorpions, but I don't know if people would even consider, Scorpions metal. But it was mainly just looking at people like late 70s, mid to late 70s, early 80s, like that span. It's like Merciful Fate. I mean, a lot of people, like, don't really like King Diamond's vocals. I get it. It's like Rush. It's like anything like that. Like, I mean, like, which I mean, like, it wouldn't be Rush if it wasn't Geddy Lee singing, But I mean, everybody would be like, oh, well, if it wasn't, if it wasn't for Neil Peart, But I get it. But I don't know, Merciful Fate, dude. I listen, like, you listen to, like, Melissa, stuff like that. I mean, that whole
musically,
musically
amazing.
Like, if you took out King Diamond's vocals and had music,
if you took out his vocals, they'd have a lot more fans.
Oh, I mean, but
they would be, I want to say they'd be as big as Metallica. They'd be like as big as Megadeth probably.
Right.
Because the musicianship is like right. I mean, to me, the same level of a band like Megadeth. I mean, just incredible guitar work. Drumming. I mean, just
because like what you mentioned in Megadeth, that's actually my number one within thrash. It's riffing. Yeah. Having, which I understand that Mustaine would be the only, one, but I mean,
he's the constant guy. He's rotated awesome lead players, but they're on my list too.
I don't know where you're wanting to. I'm gonna let you go next as far as like picking like where you want to go with it.
I'm thrash right below there, so
I'll let you do. I'll let you go first.
There. Yeah. Speaking of Megadeth and Mustaine. So this one was really hard too because thrash is like, that's my favorite style of metal.
Yeah, mine too.
It's what got me into metal. It's what made me want to be in a metal band, almost 30 years ago. And there's so many ridiculous guitar players in the genre. I think out of any genre of heavy metal outside of just traditional classic heavy metal, thrash metal has the biggest slew of amazing guitar shredders. I mean, that's just the... So, and some of them have like dual shredders, and some of them it's like a really awesome rhythm player with a guy that's, an amazing lead player. The lead guys play rhythm too, but, So, this one was hard, and this band right here, I put them 3, even though they're my favorite band of all time, only because, and I'll get to that, but 3 on my list is Metallica. And that's not the twin shredder attack, but I feel like you can't have a conversation about like the best twin guitar attack in thrash metal without at least mentioning Metallica. Even if they're maybe an honorable mention outside the 3, but for me they had to be in that top 3. So I put them 3rd. James and Kirk, I mean, it's just, to me there's no better rhythm guitar player in metal than James Hetfield, because being a guitarist and a vocalist and trying to play and sing Metallica songs when I was young, half of them to me are impossible. You know? And I mean, just like the way he down picks and palm mutes and doesn't, down and up pick with his wrist, just locked wrist solid like that, to do some of that stuff on Master of Puppets and Ride the Light. I mean, it's just, to me, it's ridiculous. And
man, Justice for All, man.
Yeah, man, and Kirk Hammett, I don't give a crap what people say. I've been hearing all the crap for 25 years about how he's overrated, blah, blah. Kirk Hammett's one of the best metal guitar players in history, and he's one of my favorite guitar players in metal, so I don't give a crap what people think.
Right.
Number 2 on the list is Megadeth. I'm a bigger Metallica fan. I'm a huge Megadeth fan, but from a musical, technical standpoint and a guitar standpoint, man, I mean, Megadeth is just... To me, they're worlds higher than Metallica is on the guitar spectrum. James and Kirk are amazing, but I mean, Dave Mustaine and anybody he's gotten to be on by his side to try to keep up with him, it has been good grief, Okay, so what I did, because there's been so many other lead guitar players that have played with Dave Mustaine, I put my favorite twin guitar attack in the Megadeth era was Mustaine and Marty Friedman.
Oh, that's what.
Because Marty Friedman is one of the baddest guitar shredders on the planet ever. I mean, good God, I've got some of his solo albums, and it's just, it's ridiculous. It's insane watching that guy play guitar. Now he's the only guitar player, in my opinion, that's ever been better than Dave Mustaine in Megadeth.
Now, did Marty Friedman play with Jason Becker on Perpetual Burn? Is that correct?
Pretty sure. I know he was in Cacophony with him.
Okay.
They started that before he was in Megadeth. So Friedman was in Megadeth for 10 years, 1990 to 2000. That's probably the longest that he's had anybody. I don't know. Because Chris Broderick was only in there for 6 years, 2008 to 14. I mentioned some of these guys as like honorable mentions because I mean the guitar players Dave Mustaine gets is ridiculous. Chris Poland, he was only in there from 84 to 87, but man, you can't, Peace Cells, I mean, dude, the guitar work on there is ridiculous from both of them. And then the current guy, Kiko, that's been with Dave since 2015, he's every bit as good as anybody else that Dave's ever had. I mean, so those guys are kind of like, I had to mention them, but for me, it's Marty Friedman and Dave Mustaine. I mean, like the stuff they did on Rust in Peace and Countdown to Extinction, and I mean, even Euthanasia and stuff. I mean, just holy crap. I mean, wow. Okay.
I mean, you said it. You said Rust in Peace. I mean, that's that's just a riff-gasm of an album. I mean, the whole just I just don't see how you could come up with an album like that. To me personally, I mean, like when you put that on and listening to the riffs and us being musicians and understanding about going to practice and then being presented and then playing it and then hearing it and then when you record it and then hearing the playback in the studio. Yeah. To hear Marty's lead and Dave's lead and then hearing all this stuff being, I don't know. I mean, like it's great that it is a mystery upon itself.
Musicians on a level that I really can't comprehend. I'm not one of them. So yeah. Anyway, so number one on my list, and really because I think this band to me, I'm not gonna say like really if we're gonna say like Megadeth really should probably be number one. I mean as far as just ability, but for me, this band represents the pure essence of thrash metal, and they have not strayed. Because here's the thing, Megadeth, they had a period there where they kind of strayed from thrash, as did Metallica. Yeah, This band has never strayed. This band has been thrashy, the kings of the thrash metal from day one. And there's another band that I'm going to list my honorable mention before I list number one. Okay. Testament would be 4. I mean, Alex Skolnick and, Eric Peterson. Yeah. Good Lord. It's... Mm-hmm. And then, James Murphy was a Testament for a little while too. But, they're honorable mention. They've got to be mentioned because Testament, and that's another band that really has never stayed. They have been heavy and thrashy from day one, and they're still, in their 50s, still putting out heavy, thrashy, just brilliance. Number one for me is Exodus. Because I remember getting cassette tape when I was 13 of Impact is Imminent. And that first song, Impact is Imminent, changed my life. I mean, I loved Metallica. But when I heard Exodus, I went, holy crap, this is thrash kicked up a notch. It's like pissed off thrash, So I'm going with the dynamic duo, the H's, man, Gary Holt and Rick Hunolt. Those are, to me, that was the dynamic duo. And those guys have been a part of Exodus. I mean, Gary Holt's been there since '83. He pretty much, I think, he replaced Kirk Hammett. Am I correct in that, or was it Rick Hunolt that replaced Kirk Hammett? I don't remember if he was there in the very beginning or what. But anyway, the two of those two guys have been there from '83 to '93, then '97 to '98, and then 2001 to 2005. Well, that's Rick Hunolt, but Gary Holt, yeah, he's been in it for '83 on the whole time. But so anyway, yeah, it's just I don't know. I got to see Gary Holt with Slayer on their final tour, and that was cool because I've never seen Exodus, and just seeing him, watching him. I saw Slayer before Jeff Hanneman passed away, and seeing the two guys both in the same band playing that stuff, I'm like, man, I love Jeff Hanneman and Slayer. Rest in peace, but dude, Gary Holt, man, he He's on another level, man. That dude's he's a beast. So that's my top 3.
Well, actually, what's really funny is our list was almost the same. Almost. I mean, like you have my number 2 and number 1.
Okay.
It's just that your honorable mention is my number 3.
Okay, I got you.
So I went number 3 Testament, number 2 Megadeth, and then number 1 Exodus as far as thrash. Honorable mention. I mean, like just like you said, Slayer. But see, there's so much, man. I mean, like it's like what do you want to, you know, like.
Yeah, and Slayer was another
like,
one. I may put them like 5 as an honorable mention too. I mean, it's just hard not to. But
but you have an Exodus one in me. Like I've been listening to like even like newer Exodus. It's still badass. Just like newer Testament is badass. I mean, like these dudes are still doing this shit.
I mean, the only difference with those bands putting out their albums now to me is the production's better.
Right.
It's like Creator, you know. Like I have a cassette tape from the mid '80s, and it's great, but it sounds like garbage quality wise. And now I get a Creator release on CD from 2018, and it's like holy moly, wow! I mean, like this band is freaking amazing because you can actually hear what they're doing, but.
Cause see, there's so much. Cause like in the thrash thing, I mean, like there's Sepultura.
Yeah.
I mean, which I mean, it's twin. I mean, like having Max as rhythm and then Andreas as a lead. Andreas didn't really get much, I guess, attention as being like a lead guy. I mean, there is lead, but a lot of it is, a lot of just rhythm riffing. Great riffing band, But it's just. When we come back and we're going to do decades, and then that'll be when everything gets, we can actually talk. These are just like, we're just picking 3 from each to, it's just as far as just like, because like you're talking about, like, it's so hard to, because like Megadeth, because I went with everything that I love. And you probably did, you too, like with all this, it's like picking these 3, it's like, 3 that I love. Like I know these 3. Like this is, because like Megadeth and Exodus, musicianship, and another one that I recently found was Forbidden. And seeing those guys from '87 shredding it up and not even realizing it. Excuse me, sorry. But that's why it was so difficult to do this. Oh man. Sorry y'all. Allergies. No Rona, but it's allergies for real. But sorry, but yeah, that's my 3. And it's just wherever you would like to go next, as far as just the
decades. When we do that next episode, some of these bands that we were talking about, Sepultura and stuff, maybe Slayer, will probably be mentioned in some of these other categories, because I feel like with Sepultura is a good example. They've morphed. They were a thrash band for a period, but they're not a thrash band now.
Right.
And they didn't really even start out as a thrash band. They were almost like borderline death metal, black metal kind of.
Yeah, man. I mean, like Beneath the Remains and then Arise. That.
And then like Metallica, that was a tough one for me, because I kept going back and forth between Metallica and Testament, because I would like. Thrashiness, I would put Testament 3, and I would keep Metallica out. But I had to put Metallica in because of a couple reasons. They're my favorite band. They're in the Big 4. They're one of the bands that gave people like us and thousands of other people out there the reason and the motivation to be in a band and love thrash. So, even though they were thrash for the first 4 albums, and then they changed over the next 2 or 3 albums, and now they've kind of gone back to their thrashiness and in a modern way, but I had to put them in there. Anyway, next on the list, we're going to go with death metal.
Oh, cool.
This one was a tough one.
Ooh, yeah.
Because I'm like, well, I listen to a lot of death metal, but there's a lot of death metal bands that don't have 2 guitar players. And then you start thinking, death metal bands that have guys that solo, because there's a lot of death metal bands that don't solo. So, that became tricky, and because of the complexity of a lot of death metal, it's like, well, holy crap. I mean, how can I do a top 3 for such a complex style of music, where it's like you have to pretty much be a badass on guitar anyway? to play death metal, you know, which is why I've never really played it, you know. But so I came up with my top 3, and really 3 of my favorite death metal bands. So go figure. I finally settled on number 3, Cannibal Corpse. You know, they're one of my favorite death metal bands. I have a lot of their albums, and I celebrate their catalog, and I know a lot about them. So, you know, that's kind of who I went with, and I still think, you know, that I know there's people that don't love Cannibal Corpse, and they kind of stopped listening after Chris Barnes left, and the era's changed, and vocalist and style, you know, changed, you know, a bit with the old, you know, Chris Barnes era versus the, you know, the Corpse Grinder era, even though Corpse Grinder's been their singer for way longer. But, you know, I love Cannibal Corpse. I love both eras. So, because they've had a revolving door of guitar players. They've had the same drummer, they've had the same bass player, because, I mean, Alex Webster and Markowitz, I mean, those guys are, you know, they're awesome. Alex Webster, to me, he's the best bass player in metal. Definitely the best death metal bass player. Anyway, I did Pat O'Brien and Jack Owen. I feel like that's kind of like their best era of twin guitar players, you know. Jack Owen was with them from 88 to 2004, so a big chunk, and then Pat O'Brien's been with them since 97. So Jack Owen's not in the band anymore, and Pat O'Brien's not an original member, but still, I feel like that's kind of the, to me, that's the really good era. Those guys are awesome. They've got other good guitar players in Cannibal Corpse, and have had other ones in the past too. Number 2, Suffocation. One of my favorite death metal bands, and I'm like, man, Terrence Hobbs is like, he's basically the creator of breakdowns that has basically influenced deathcore, metalcore, hardcore bands. I mean, modern metal. I think that guy's like a huge pioneer in metal guitar playing, especially in death metal. And you don't hear people talk about him that much.
No, not at all.
And man, watch that dude play, and the guy's like 50, 51, 52 years old, and he's still freaking brutal, man. I mean, the guy, like, he's the greatest breakdown riff writer ever, in my opinion, next to Kirk. But he can play technical. He plays leads. I mean, he's a great guitar player. So he's been with the band from 1990, still in the band, and they've had a revolving door of second guitar players too. So I just did what I feel like was like their best period of the 2 guitar players was Terrence and Doug Cerrito. He was with them from 90 to 98 when they put out like some of their best work. Number 1 on the list, I feel like you can't have this band without, you know, in the death metal genre, is Death. Chuck Schuldiner, and insert any number of other guitar players. And I literally put that on my notes, but I mentioned 2 of them, James Murphy, who was only in the band from 89 to 90, and Shannon Hamm, who was their last guy that was in the band from 96 to 2001. I feel like that guy might be the best guitar player that Chuck Schuldiner had, and very underrated guy, because you just don't really hear his name mentioned in the likes of a guy like James Murphy or Andy LaRocque or, you know, other guys that have played with Chuck. But man, the guitar work on The Sound of Perseverance and the stuff that Shannon did with Chuck on Control Denied, I'm like, dude, I mean, like Richard Christie, I mean, the drummer, to me, that's like, the Sound of Perseverance lineup for Death, to me, is the best musicianship that ever existed. So that's my top 3 in death metal.
Well, here we go again. You already picked 2 out of my 3. So, this one was a difficult one, because I've been doing all this old school, and then I was like, man, I'm not talking about I haven't brought up any new school guys. You know, like with doing my list. So, as far as my number 3 is going to be Beyond Creation. I don't know if you've ever heard.
I've heard the name. I don't think I've heard it.
As far as this being technical, I've personally never really seen people play like that before. I imagine, unfortunately for me, I didn't do my homework on them to give you names. This is only from what I've witnessed and have listened to from them. The bass player plays a fretless bass and lots of finger tapping and sliding, and I don't know, y'all. That's just they're like a whole other level of death metal, you know.
Check them out.
My number. What's funny is that my number 2 and number 1 are the same as his. Suffocation and Death. But it's like, see, Cannibal Corpse is one of my favorite bands too. Oh God, there's just it's just so, but it's so hard. And the only reason I brought in Beyond Creation is just like I said, it's just trying to throw some sort of bone to some new school guys that are just, you know, just trying to mention something. Because like, if not, this is all just going to be just pretty much just like all just forefathers from the. Yeah. Which I mean, it means nothing wrong with that. I mean, like if it wasn't for these guys, then you wouldn't have what you have today, and you can't, you know. And then like Mike was saying, and it all stems back to, you know, the band on his shirt, and you know, if it wasn't for them, and you wouldn't have this and then that, you know. But yeah, this is just a hard list of just stuff just to do. But this is like Mike said. I mean, like Suffocation with the breakdowns. I mean, all about being for the Suffocation seems more about the pit. They love the pit. You know, being on stage and looking out and seeing people circle pit. Yeah, I mean, like you want to write stuff to get people moving, and that's what Suffocation does. Death is more of technical, but it's based off of it's more pretty beautiful. It's it sounds kind of classically, you know, inspired. Just the musicianship. It's like you're saying, dude. It's just like, you know, really just pick an album. Yeah. Pick a death album and kind of just go with it. And I mean, like, then you'll just see, because I mean, you take Human and you mix Death and Cynic, and then later on, then you get Steve DiGiorgio and then Gene Hoglan come in, and then, you know, you're talking Richard Christie, and, you know, it's just like, oh, I mean, with Death, you can't ever go wrong with Death in anything. And because like when I did my list, I already had those two put on. I had my number 2, number 1, and then I was like fighting to do number 3.
Number 3 was the hard one.
You know, it's like who do I bring in to, you know, to have some sort of something, you know. But yeah, this is a difficult,
and it's only going to get harder.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break. We'll come back with the second video of this topic in just a few minutes.
Thanks for not watching.